Hello. That works. Wow. All right. Good morning. Nice to see some familiar faces. Welcome to First Parish in Hingham, also known as Old Ship Church. My name is Janice McPhillips, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather here as an open community that honors freedom of belief, encourages spiritual growth in ourselves and in our children, and shares the wisdom of the many religious traditions with reverence for the earth and in service to humanity. We gather here, excuse me, on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag peoples, the original nations of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. We are mindful that for Massachusetts and Wampanoag peoples of every generation, this land is sacred. We welcome you to bring all that you are to our community, your identity, your story, and the wisdom of your years to this congregation. You are welcome here. If you are visiting today or newly attending our services, please know that you and everyone here are welcome to gather for coffee and conversation after the service at our new location at 14 Main Street. So for those of you who might be new, 14 Main Street, the entrance is actually on South Street. So follow the crowd down Main Street, turn right on South, and it's the first door on your right. Please note in your order of worship this week's schedule of events here at Old Ship. If you have any questions, please stop by our welcome table just inside the room there, and you can find any of the members of our board are wearing name tags with a pink border around them. We're happy that you are here today. If you're looking for inspiration, comfort, or connection, we hope that you will find it here. Our morning service will now begin.
Thank you for coming. This is our Thanksgiving celebration. We'll have a community Thanksgiving celebration on Wednesday night here in this same space at 7 o'clock. But this is our congregational Thanksgiving service. And I ask you to turn to 515 in the back of your hymnal. Next week, we'll have Reverend Dick Fuchs speaking to you. I'll be gone for Thanksgiving, for family Thanksgiving, but do come. He always has something to say. He's been around for, I think, 40 years in the Blue Channing District. Wonderful man. And here's something that he wrote in 515. We'll read it responsively. We lift up our hearts in thanks for the sun and the dawn which we did not create, for the moon and the evening, which we did not make, for food which we plant but cannot grow, for friends and loved ones we cannot buy, for this gathered company which welcomes us as we are from wherever we have come, for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, truth, and love, for all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship, we lift up our hearts and thanks. Eric? I'll let do you want light or do you want to say something? Okay.
Gracious, good morning. I offer a few words for the chalice lighting this morning. From my daughter, I asked her about grandparents, and there are flowers, perhaps they were last week when I was far away or next week, but parents and grandparents are some of our earliest and greatest influences, and I was very lucky to have hardworking Dutch grandparents and Unitarian grandparents on the other side, and to which my daughter says, "Thank you, grandparents."
In your teal hymnal, in hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please rise as you're able.
Good morning. I'm Louise Smith on the Pastoral Care Committee. I invite you all to stand, say your name, and tell us about the joys and concerns that you're feeling this morning. Please wait for the mic. Trish, way in back.
Good morning, Trish McAleer. I just wanted to light a candle for all of the trans people who have lost their lives this past year. Tomorrow will be Trans Day of Remembrance. And we will be commemorating this with our UU neighbors up in Quincy at 7 o'clock. There'll be a vigil on the steps of the, I guess it's called the President's Church. They're right in the Rotary there in Quincy, downtown Quincy. So some of us are meeting ahead of time. So if you'd like to join us, please get a hold of me, and we'd be happy to have you. Thank you.
Guys, are you way over?
Good morning. Clayton Handelman, he, him. I just wanted to light a candle of joy. We had a community dinner last night, and it was loads of fun. We filled up 14 Main Street, and people had been worried about whether it would work. I think it worked well. And we were supposed to have a game night, but we were having so much fun just chitting and chatting that we never got to the games. It was a lot of fun, good food. Hope we have some more of those in the coming months.
Good morning. I'm Roy Harris, and I'd like to light a candle of joy for my almost 5-year-old granddaughter, Rosie, short for Roosevelt, who is visiting from New York. Roosevelt, New York. And she's home watching on TV. And so I wanted to say hello across the mile to her.
Yeah. Diane wants. Yeah, wants.
Hi, my name is Eric Eldering Cornetta, he, him, whatever. And a candle of joy for bright yellow carpets of leaves underneath naked trees.
Good morning, Diane Elliott. This is kind of an announcement candle, but it's a candle of joy for the 5 or 6 days that 4 of us spent in the basement of the Girl Scout house, the dungeon, and for all the beautiful wreaths that we have made. And we have some outside here for sale, and there's some at the Girl Scout house, and we hope that you will come and buy them and support the church. And also a candle of celebration because there are 2 children in this room, and it makes me so happy. So welcome to the children.
My name is Karen Plaskin, and I'd like to light a candle for Thanksgiving. We're hosting Thanksgiving in our house this year with my siblings and my dad. And for the first time, none of our children are going to be there. My sisters and mine, they're all spread throughout the country. And so it will be nice, but it will be very weird to not have any of them there, and a little bit melancholy that they're all out in the world. But so that's it.
My name is Ralph Brown. I'd like to light a candle of joy that we will be celebrating our Day of Thanks here in the Meeting House on Wednesday night.
Morgan Morales, she, her, hers. I would like to light a candle of joy that was born. She's about 1 month old now. Emmeline May West. I'm so excited to have her in the family.
Ori Fitzmarquez, she, her. I just want to say that I know that some people have been praying for my family, and I'm just so grateful that last week we took my mom to the ER, and now she's in rehab, and we have been so blessed that she's still with us and she bounces back, and that there's a place for her to go in a world where there's so many that don't have a place to go. Thank you.
I'd like to light a candle for my mom, Sally Herzig, who died on Friday and who lived in this town for, we were doing math, 52 years since 1971. And it's a joy to be back in this building where she brought me to. I played my violin in here, I sang in here, I did so many ecumenical events in here, and I'm just grateful to be here. Oh, she, they. So thank you.
So I would like to light a candle in honor of Reverend Robinson, who has been my friend for well over 50 years. My name is Kevin Bott. I come as a visitor from Jamaica Plain, but I have great joy and deep abiding affection for your minister, who's been my friend for almost forever.
I'm going to do a quick one too. We're just trading off over here. My name is Levi Breslow, they, them. I'm here with this one, and thank you for welcoming us at this time. It's really important to be here. And separately, I'd like to light a candle for those who are experiencing suffering and displacement in the Middle East right now on all sides. We need to find a way to end the violence there. So just want to put that into the space. Thank you.
Lots of joy today.
I'm getting a workout here. You are, Derek. Sorry about that. I took a while. I'm Ellie Handelman, she, her, and I want to light a candle of thanksgiving for the opportunity on Thursday to be with our Indigenous siblings who will be observing their National Day of Mourning Thursday in Plymouth.
What else?
Are there any on, none on Zoom? Well, this is the most candles I've ever seen at one time, but I'm going to light one more. And it's a candle of joy for all the joy that Christopher Nicholson Mann brings to the choir in practice every week. It's so much fun to rehearse with him, and brings to the congregation through his piano and his organ. Thank you, Christopher. We hold in our hearts the joys and concerns that have not been expressed yet in words this morning. Thank you.
Our hymn is number 68. Come, ye thankful people, come. Rise as you are able.
Our
I'll introduce our silent meditation with this prayer written by my friend Ursula Goodenough called Everybody's Prayer. And then we'll have some time of silence. Our Mother who art within us, hallowed be thy name. Thy ways evolve. Thy will calls forth this earth that is now our heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and fill us with tenderness as we repair our trespasses. And lead us not into destruction, but deliver us into harmony. For thine is our source and our substrate and our glory forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Good morning. The words this morning are Run, River, Run by Reverend Susan Hull. And Susan begins with a quote from Wendell Berry. We are what we are given and what is taken away. Norman McLean wades into the swift silver of the big Blackfoot River, casting for memories with the same reverence that he reserves for trout. Planting his feet in the slowly deepening riverbed, Norman begins to hear the long story of his life cascading by. From his birth in Missoula, Montana, where the riverbanks were the breasts on which he fed as a child, through a restive adolescent initiation in the roaring rapids. The still reflections of his first love, and the dark eddies of gambling and debt that pulled his brother under. Now all are gone home before him in that great race to the sea. Eventually, Norman concludes from the timeless sibilant prayer, Water on Rock, eventually all things merge into one, and a river runs through it. There is a river that runs through us. It is mystery. It is life. Some say God. It descends through my granite soul with the force of gravity and love, plunges through the empty canyons, chisels out corridors with its wet hands, and slowly, ever so, widens the cracks and crevices of my failures into pools where grace collects. The injury of the river is also a gift. Where I have been cut deeply, so their life most deeply, most surely flows. I don't believe that the gifts of God come in the form of goodness, but in the face of life itself. In danger's shadow as well as dazzling light, in disquieted heart as often as a still mind, in labor as in love. If we would receive the sacred, we must receive the river's flow, even as it injures, given as it takes away. I thank God for my handicaps, said Helen Keller. Unable to hear a bubbling stream or see its glistening green or put into praise, yet she praises. I thank God for my handicaps, for through them I have found myself, my work, my God. That to me is thanksgiving. It's not about being glad for all the good things that have happened to us. They are simply moments in the sun. Thanksgiving is standing still with an injured and open heart and letting the river run freely through us. Each year at this time, I stop and cast into the water. I count the story of the year past, of life given and taken away, our planet's staggering losses, our moments of forgiveness, our fulgent gains. I think of a friend's child who came swimming into this world on amniotic rivers, and I remember my grandmother's final crossing over to the other shore. I remember the intense hope of my eyes brimming with vows of marriage and the loosening tears of those whose hope was broken. I think of my own love found or friends lost. We are what we are given and what is taken away, blessed by the name of the river and taker, giver and taker. The confluence of all things returns to the sea, the source. The gift unites with the giver. Let the river run. The banks of my heart are wide with thanks.
Good morning. My name is Daveline Cooper, and we've used she, her pronouns. I'm here as the chair of the Social Justice Council. This morning's offering is our special plate collection. This month, our special plate recipient is Friends of the Homeless of the South Shore. As you may be aware, shelter beds are filled up in Massachusetts, but the need is not. And our friends on the South Shore are trying to fill even more need than they normally do with their shelters. And so we think this is an important way to support them. In addition, you may know that in the past, Old Ship has held the dinner for the Friends of the Homeless of the South Shore. Last year, we were able to do the last dinner of that kind in the parish house. And the funds from this special offering will first go to buy the food for the dinner, and then remaining funds will go to the friends. The dinner has a new location this year. It wouldn't quite fit into 14 Main to serve 130 people dinner. We will be at the Congregational Church, but Old Ship is still providing the dinner itself, as other groups will also be providing things, including like Santa. The dinner will be Tuesday, December 12th, and Janice McPhillips is organizing the dinner, and she would love volunteers to help cook, serve, and then clean up. So see Janice for that. It is a fabulous experience. You know, last year was the first dinner after 2 years of COVID. And oftentimes the kids in the shelter get to see kids in other shelters, and to see those kids reunited was the most precious thing I think I've ever seen, because they were so excited to see their friends. So we hope that you will be as generous as you can be to our friends on the South Shore and those who do not have homes. Thank you.
didn't finish my joy and concern. That was the joy, at the joys and concern. But I also, this is Thanksgiving. I want to thank my friend Kevin Bott for giving me a ride here from JP to Lexington to Hingham to Lexington to JP. That's a friend. That's a friend. Harvest of gratitude. Let's start by reminding ourselves of where the story of the first Thanksgiving comes from. It occurred in Plymouth, less than 100 miles from here. We know about it because of a few sentences in a letter written by a pilgrim named Edward Winslow on December 11th, 1621, to a friend back in England. Quote, "Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, that so we might, after a more special manner, rejoice together, after we had gathered the fruit of our labors. They 4 in one day killed as much fowl as with a little help beside served the company almost a week, at which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and among the rest, their greatest king, Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor and upon the captain and others." End quote. Out of this terse account, white America has spun the myth of the first Thanksgiving, the holiday many of us grew up celebrating. To many, it is dearer than Christmas. Certainly, many of us attempt to get our families together for the occasion, with the result that on the roads, rails, and in the skies, the days around the holiday are the busiest travel days of the year. About a month ago, I preached a sermon on the October holiday I grew up celebrating as Columbus Day, which many people now call Indigenous Peoples Day. Looking at Christopher Columbus as a historical figure, I said I could easily argue that we ought to say goodbye, Columbus, in light of the oppressions visited upon the indigenous peoples of this hemisphere by Columbus and the Europeans who followed in his wake. Columbus, the historical explorer, stands for Pizarro and Balboa and Cortez, etc., etc. In excising his name from the celebration, we're trying to honor the many unnamed Indians who suffered and died because of this incursion, just like we recite a land acknowledgement to honor the Massachusetts who once lived on the land we now occupy. That was October. Now this is November. It would seem that the story of the so-called first Thanksgiving would suffer the same fate if we really believe that the European settlement of North America was an unmitigated disaster for the natives. Wouldn't we be inclined to rename Thanksgiving as a national day of mourning, as Native American activists and allies have been urging for half a century? Let me introduce you to someone from Cape Cod, whom I never met during my time there, but whose friends and relatives I did meet and who talk about him still. Frank James preferred to be known by his Wampanoag name, Wamsutta, which was the name of one of the sons of the Wampanoag chief, Massasoit. Frank's family had lived in the Chatham area for a long time. He was a talented musician and the first Native American graduate of the New England Conservatory. He might have been headed for spots in orchestras, but he ran into prejudice there and spent a long career in music education in the Cape Cod public schools. But Frank also became an Indian rights activist. Let us visit the year 1970 in Plymouth. Plymouth, Massachusetts got its fame from the landing there in 1620 of the Mayflower. In 1970, as the 350th anniversary of that milestone approached, the committee planning its celebration asked the Wampanoag tribe to send a speaker to the ceremony, and they chose Frank James. But when the organizers saw what Frank was planning to say, they would not let him speak. Frank and his allies went out to a spot nearby outdoors to give the speech. That was where they also started the tradition that persists to this day to rename this holiday from Thanksgiving Day to a national day of mourning. We know what Frank James would have said because he promptly published the talk when the committee would not permit him to speak. Here's a little of what Frank James was going to say on that occasion 52 years ago. It is with mixed emotion that I stand here to share my thoughts. This is a time of celebration for you, celebrating an anniversary of a beginning for the white man in America, a time of looking back, of reflection. It is with a heavy heart that I look back upon what happened to my people. Even before the Pilgrims landed, it was common practice. This is continuing the quote from Frank James. Even before the Pilgrims landed, it was common practice for explorers to capture Indians, take them to Europe, and sell them as slaves for 220 shillings apiece. The Pilgrims had hardly explored the shores of Cape Cod for 4 days before they had robbed the graves of my ancestors and stolen their corn and beans. Mort's relation, that's the history of the time, describes a searching party of 16 men. Mort goes on to say that this party took as much of the Indians' winter provisions as they were able to carry. Continuing Frank's address, Massasoit, the great sachem of the Wampanoag, knew these facts, yet he and his people welcomed and befriended the settlers of the Plymouth plantation. Perhaps he did this because his tribe had been depleted by an epidemic, or his knowledge of the harsh oncoming winter was the reason for his peaceful acceptance of these acts. This action by Massasoit was perhaps our biggest mistake. We, the Wampanoag, welcomed you, the white man, with open arms, little knowing that it was the beginning of the end, that before 50 years were to pass, the Wampanoag would no longer be a free people. Unquote. From the point of view of Frank James and his allies, we should rename Thanksgiving as a national day of mourning because it symbolizes the genocide, the evictions, the broken promises that were to come in the relations between European settlers and the indigenous peoples. But I'm here to tell you this morning, I see a difference. Columbus Day, as it came down to us in my lifetime, was a day devoted to a white European explorer. Thanksgiving, as I grew up with it, was centered around the feeling of gratitude. Of course, there's a lot that is piled on top of the gratitude in contemporary American practice. There is the food, and then more food, and then more food, and then football games, and a bit to drink, and traffic jams and busy highways, bus stations, and airports. There are family reunions and political discussions whose tensions always stop just short of a fist fight. But I think if you dig your way to the bottom of the pile of stuff Thanksgiving is full of, you might find a spiritual value worth contemplating. My colleagues Christine Robinson and Alicia Hawkins wrote this a few years ago. Let me get it. My colleagues Christine Robinson and Alicia Hawkins wrote this a few years ago. Whatever one's beliefs about faith and grace, gratitude is basic. Like hope, trust, and love, gratitude is both a feeling and a spiritual practice. Though we have little control over our immediate feelings, we can decide to cultivate the ground in which these feelings thrive. End quote. Feelings come and feelings go. And part of spiritual maturity is to realize we have feelings, but we are not just the feelings we have. There is more to us than that. To say that gratitude is both a feeling and a spiritual practice is to say that we have some choice in the latter, which we don't in the former. At any moment in the day, we can choose to live in gratitude. We can choose not only to be grateful, but to realize our gratefulness. And when we appreciate that life is a collection of moments, we can choose to live our lives in gratitude, to dedicate our lives to thanking. Some would say that is the definition of religion, a life lived in thanks. I can understand the feelings behind Frank James's push to rename Thanksgiving. The majority culture wants to use the holiday as an occasion for self-satisfaction. Aren't we lucky to live amidst so much stuff? Not only all the food we have, but all the gadgets we can buy. If that's the meaning you put on Thanksgiving, I would not raise my voice a decibel to defend the traditional name. But history is not static. We know more now about the history of the settlement of North America than people did 50 years ago. And we know more about it from the point of view of the indigenous people. Last year, there was a book called The Dawn of Everything by an anthropologist and an archaeologist, a couple of radical scholars re-examining some precepts of the theory of how societies evolve. That book put forth the idea that many of the best ideas of the Enlightenment, which we had been taught was a European invention, actually arose from the encounter of European with native cultures. Now there's another book which has come out in a similar vein, Pekka Hamalainen's Indigenous Continent. Hamalainen is a Finnish scholar of the history of indigenous America, and he sets out in his book to deconstruct some of the myths with which people have approached this history. His book was reviewed in the New Yorker a few weeks back by a Native American scholar named David Troyer, who teaches at the University of Southern California. The reviewer, David Troyer, tells us he read a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee when he was a college student at Princeton, but they did not seem to describe accurately his experience. Other Native Americans were few and far between in that place, but the central thesis of the book still didn't match his observations. Quote, far from my Ojibwe homeland, marooned I sometimes felt on the distant shores of a self-satisfied republic, I readily accepted the version of history promoted by Brown's books, that Native American history was a litany of abuses, disease, slavery, warfare, dispossession, forced removal, the near extermination of the American bison, as many of you probably saw that beautiful film last week, land grabs, forced assimilation that had erased our way of life. And yet my culture and civilization didn't feel gone. When I looked westward and back in time, I couldn't help think that Brown's historical record was incomplete, that the announcement of our collective death was rather premature, unquote. Indigenous Continent, says Troyer in his review, aims to correct the record. There were many forms of native social life when the Europeans arrived, and it is an oversimplification to say that the settlers called all the shots. There were patterns of domination by one tribe over another. Troyer summarizes Hamalainen's book this way, quote, in its opening pages, Hamalainen maintains that the America we know was, in its borders, shape, and culture, far from inevitable. Even after the so-called colonial era, tribal nations often played a determining role in American history. In his view, we should speak not of colonial America, but of an indigenous America that was only slowly and unevenly becoming colonial, and recognize that the central reality of the period was ongoing indigenous resistance. By 1776, he noted, European powers had claimed most of the continent, but indigenous people continued to control it. Instead of a foreordained story of decline and victimization, Hamalainen wants us to see a parade of contingencies, with native nations regularly giving as good as they got, or even better. The result, he promises, will be a North American history recentered on native peoples and their own, quote, overwhelming and persisting power. The point of this book, Indigenous Continent, would seem to be to decenter Eurocentric assumptions when looking at this history. The question before us now is, does the mourning we may do for the injustices suffered by the original human inhabitants of this land prevent us from coming together to offer thanks for the blessings we have in this life? For our sorrow over the injustices of the past and our mindfulness of the ways in which our sojourn on this planet has been blessed by beauty, love, support, are quite different things. They're apples compared with oranges. Yes, as a person of European descent, I acknowledge that my ancestors probably participated in some way, direct or indirect, of the dislocation and removal of native tribes from the southeast in the Trail of Tears, as I acknowledge that my southern ancestors enslaved people of African descent, as I acknowledge that the land on which this church is built was at one time occupied by the Massachusetts people. It does not surprise me that the history of relations between these various kinds of people are subject to self-justification and distortion. I've been using Susan Hall's essay on Thanksgiving almost my whole ministry career because I think she gets it so right. It is not about good things happening to you. It's beyond good and bad. Whatever is happening to you right now presupposes that there's a you to whom it is happening, and there's a world within which it is happening. And those two elements make up the object of gratitude. Mourning is not the opposite of gratitude. Mourning is a natural process when you have suffered a loss. It allows you to bring up in your mind and memory who or what it is you have lost. In my case, I lost my older brother, Alan, in September of 2022. When I remember him, I mourn the very painful fact that his gentle wit and grace are no longer present to me. But I am at the same time grateful that he was in my life for 7 decades. Mourning is not the opposite of gratitude, but can be a basis for gratitude. Susan Hall writes, quote, "There is a river that runs through us. It is mystery. It is life. Some say God. It descends through my granite soul with the force of gravity and love, plunges through empty canyons, chiseled out corridors with its wet hands, and slowly, ever so, widens the cracks and crevices of my failures into pools where grace collects." She goes on, "The injury of the river is also its gift. Where I have been cut deeply, so their life most deeply, most surely flows." I don't believe that the gifts of God come in the form of goodness, but in the face of life itself, in danger's shadow as well as dazzling light, in a disquieted heart as often as a still mind, in labor as in love. If we would receive the sacred, we must receive the river's flow, even as it injures, even as it takes away. That, to me, is thanksgiving. It is not being glad for the good things that have happened to us. They're simply moments in the sun. Thanksgiving is standing still with an injured and open heart and letting the river run freely through us. The genocide, infection, occupation, and exile of Indians from their lands is an enormous tragedy on the world stage. It behooves anyone of any ancestry to weep and to mourn the natural harmonies which were brutally disrupted, as well as to cheer the instances in which Native resistance allowed some bits of Native culture to survive into the present. Mourning is not the opposite of gratitude. It deepens the gratitude. As Susan Hall concludes, quote, "We are what we are given and what is taken away, blessed by the name of the giver and taker. The confluence of all things returns to the sea, the source. The gift unites with the giver. Let the river run. The banks of my heart are wide with thanks. Amen. We sing now together. Number 67 is our closing hymn. Extinguishing of the chalice, and you're welcome to join in the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of the community, or the fire of enmity. These we carry in our hearts to the light of May the light of love be shining deep within your spirit. May the torch of mercy clear the path and show the way. May the horn of plenty sound so everyone can hear it. May the light of love be with you every day. Amen.